And a very good morning to you. This fine Saturday morning, before Thanksgiving. This is Drive Time Radio. I'm New York Vinnie, and we get to for the next, I don't know, hour or so, talk cars, which is something I always love to do. It's our usual Saturday morning chat called Drive Time Radio. And we are here now every Saturday morning from 11 till 12. And we go over car news. We talk about things that are going on in the automotive world. We check in with the newsmakers and shakers and bakers and all of the people who are making the automotive world what it is today. Now, what is the automotive world today? We're going to have to settle that, and I don't think it's going to happen this morning because we're going to go and check out the LA Auto Show with our good friend Perry Stern, who joins us from time to time to talk about cars and things that are going on in the car world. And so we'll check in with him and find out what the haps is down in Los Angeles. This is the final big car show of the year for journalists and everybody to flock to LA. Gives everybody a chance to pick up those palm tree themed Christmas gifts for everybody, or Hanukkah gifts, and you move on from there. So what is happening around here and around the world of drive time this week? Well, there's a lot going on, actually, in many different quarters. Some of them really good, some of them maybe not so good. My friends at Stellantis are undergoing some really tough times right now. They're having trouble with the union. They're cutting back on production of vehicles. They can't sell Jeeps. I mean, imagine that. You can't sell a Jeep. Why? Well, a lot of people think they're overpriced, that they're not worth the money that Stellantis is asking for them. I mean, you go to buy a Jeep Wrangler, which is the traditional Jeep that we see and we think about, and you're talking 60 grand by the time you get out of there with the tax and license and everything. And in many quarters, you pay more for them. It's too expensive for a Jeep. I think, and many of my Jeep driving friends say, they got to go to Hot for the equivalent of what they paid for their house, or their parents paid for their house, to go out and buy a Jeep to go off-roading. People find something. They'll buy a big screen TV and stay home and watch YouTube videos for people that do off-road. It's just there comes a saturation point, a breaking point. Also, quality concerns with Stellantis products. And, I mean, I haven't had problems with them personally when I've test driven them, when I've used them, when I've rented them. But if you look at the charts, the stuff people that issue charts on this kind of stuff and facts and figures on this kind of stuff, you see that there are some problems there that need to be addressed. And listen, when you go and you buy a vehicle that you're going to pay $60,000 for, so you can go unquestionably off-road wherever you want to go, the last thing you want to think about is that there's a problem with this thing, that I may blow the transmission, that it may not start, it may not do this, it may not do that in the wilderness, to places where the AAA can't dispatch a tow truck right away, places where you have to get a helicopter to get the car out of where it is. You don't want that in your mind, because you need that confidence. So Stellantis is really taking a beating right now. They've pushed back production dates, introductions, things like that. And they're just trying to get their act together right now. We'll keep you updated on that. I don't know yet how it's going to affect some of their new electric product that's coming out. And that's another thing that's big talk in the car business these days, is what exactly is going to be the electric product. And where is it going to fit in the grand scheme of the automotive world? With the election, we know that President Trump is not particularly friendly toward electric cars. Used them as one of his campaign pillars. And So the car companies with these billion-dollar investments are not quite sure where to go and what to do. Is the infrastructure going to continue to be being built? Are they going to take that money away? What's going to happen around that? Now, the good thing is, and I just drove the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show, but what a car that is, man. Drove it up to Vancouver and back last night and didn't have a problem charging it. I stopped one time to replenish it because I didn't want to, get stuck on the freeway. And when I pulled off the freeway in Bellingham, there were dozens of machines, of charging machines. Everywhere you looked there. Whole Foods, there was some. There was some at Fred Meyer. There was a few in a gas station. I mean, they were all there. So at least along the I-5 corridor, that charging question that you have is, will I be able to pull over and get charging for my electric vehicle? It looks like has been answered. Now, don't forget that that are running these are not-for-profit company or for-profit companies, and if the demand isn't there, well, the charges aren't going to be there. So, is this going to be taken over by private enterprise? Is the funding, the incentives going to go away? Or are we going to see continued, as these vehicles develop, are we going to see continued participation by people, no matter what the president says? This car is clean. It runs good. It's quiet. It gets me where I'm going. So I'm going to continue on my electric car journey. I suspect a lot of people are going to be like that. I also suspect a lot of people are going to be, geez, thank God I don't have to buy this car. I can just go get me the big deal is right now is that if you want an electric car and you think that fits your lifestyle and how you use your car, and that's a big thing here, is these electric cars have to be looked at as how do they fit my lifestyle? Do I take a lot of long road trips? Or do I just putter around the city? But if they fit your lifestyle, boy, there are some deals out there right now. I mean, I think I've seen the Chevy. Is it the Equinox? The all-electric Equinox. Well, it's one of those Chevy models that sit in that smaller SUV category. $189 a month. Think about that for a second. $189. Most people's car payments these days are for a new car in the $700-800 range, $600-800, depending on what you bought, and interest rates, et cetera, et cetera. But you can walk out of a dealership for $189 a month. Go look online. There's ads all over the place. Go on Car Edge and look at their electric vehicle offerings and what they're bringing to the table. And I think that we're going to find in no short time that this is what's going to sell electric cars, is when they're less expensive than a comparable ICE, internal combustion engine vehicle. When you see that, and people get that, that's when you're going to see electric cars really start to take off. And you have the safety feeling that you'll be able to drive this car, 300 miles on a charge. I think that's the step that you have to go over to gain acceptance. 250 at the very least, 300 if you're getting in it every day. And I think another thing is the ability of having a home charger, which, again, there's great deals for those right now. If you buy, we were just talking to the gentleman from Ford last week, and they're running a deal where if you buy a Ford electric, a Lightning or a Mustang Mach-E, they'll come and put the charger in your house. They'll come, they'll pay for it, they'll bring the charger, they'll screw it into the wall, hook it up to the electric, and every night when you come home, You just plug it in, and you'll have your max range right there when you start off in the morning. So there are really good deals, and companies are still, I think, going toward electric vehicles, all electric fleets. But I think also that, listen, you're seeing the writing on the wall that half of America, or maybe even less than that, maybe a quarter to a half of America, want to stick with their ICE vehicles. And so there's a lot of volatility in the market right now, a lot of volatility in what you should buy if you are, in fact, in the market for a new vehicle right now. Again, the prices, the payments on some of these electric vehicles look very, very, very attractive. But before you buy it, make sure that it's a vehicle that fits your lifestyle, that fits what you are going to want to do with it. And, you have to consider that. You have to be smart when you go out and buy a car these days. You can't be, oh, la-di-da, I like the color, let's buy it. Those days are gone. There's several decisions you're going to have to make, a checklist you're going to have to check off, and you better, or you're going to find yourself making a $50,000 mistake. And with a car that doesn't fit your needs. And it's something I've been saying for a long time, is that the automotive world is evolving into a place where you're going to buy a car like you buy clothes. You're going to buy a car that fits what looks good on you the best, what you can use the best. You don't go out and buy a three-piece suit. I don't know if anybody buys a three-piece suit anymore, but you don't buy a three-piece suit if you're going to be working digging ditches. Consequently, you don't wear overalls to a board meeting unless you're Arnold Ziffel. But the idea here is that cars are becoming items that you will buy suiting your specific purpose. And if you need something that goes outside of that specific purpose, will you buy it? Will you rent it? I mean, if you're puttering around the city all day and you put 100 miles on your car running around, picking the kids up from school, and then you have a weekend that you want to go somewhere or take a road trip, there's a very good chance that you're going to go on to Turo, one of the car services like that, and say, oh, there's a convertible, or there's a station wagon or a Woody or something like that I want to take this road trip in this car. I'll pay for it, and I still get the savings with my electricity. I get to have my electric car, but I also get a car that I can feel confident with going on a road trip. So that I think is where this is going to go, where it's eventually going to wind up, is that you're going to buy cars in that manner. You're going to buy a car that suits you, because you are going to have to make some important decisions if you are in the market for a car. And as I said, if you're in the market for an American, not for American, but for a electric car, this could be your time. Now, again, the volatility of the market, not knowing, is a huge factor here. And one of the people that know about these kinds of things and also know about everything that's happening at the Los Angeles Auto Show, which is now called Automobility or something in that range, but it's still kind of the last place this year that people are going to go and see what's out. Manufacturers have been saving their rollouts, or the ones that they couldn't roll out until now because they didn't have it quite right, or whatever. Perry Stern is a longtime contributor to this show, and even better, a longtime friend, a good guy, a chef extraordinaire. This guy makes things that, just looking at the pictures on Facebook, make you want to get in your car, drive over to his house, and partake in whatever he's got rolled up in some dough on his kitchen counter. Perry, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. Before we talk cars, I got to know, what are you making for Thanksgiving?
I'm going to my sister's. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to eat.
That for you, that's probably a good thing, right? Because you're always cooking up bacon. You're always doing something like that, huh?
Oh, I love to. I mean, that's the way I take a break is I go work in the kitchen. I go
But
make stuff.
you've influenced me with that too because I loved to cook when I was younger, and I see the stuff that you do, and I say, boy, that looks. You got to be proud when you pull that baking sheet out of the oven or tray or whatever you're making. It's got to be an immense great feeling of sitting there saying, "Wow, I made that."
Oh yeah, I mean, plus it's good and it's good for you. So yeah, I much prefer to have my own stuff than buy a store-bought, loaf of bread. I like making my own bread. I make my own English muffins, and like you said, I make my own bacon. It's
See, when you
fun
make your own
and
bacon,
it's
you're
tasty.
serious, right? How are you, my friend? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while. Well, I don't live out northwest anymore. I'm now out in Michigan. So
So you
it's a
have
little
power.
different. Yes, I have power. I heard that I missed the bomb cyclone. My
Oh,
daughter was without power. She still lives out there. But yeah, it's we just have, normal fall weather right now where it's about, I don't know, 44 degrees and gray, and it snowed a couple days ago for the first time this season, and I'm sure there'll be more on the way. So I'm ready for it. I love driving in the snow.
it's nice. I love the fact that you're a guy who can go back there and drive and feel great about driving in the snow. Got your chains probably in the trunk and ready to make any trip that's necessary during that time. But
Just gotta have
yet,
the right tires.
exactly. Yet we gathered to talk about the Los Angeles Auto Show, where at last I heard, and I know it's an ever changing climate. Um, no snow. They're not going to have any snow down in LA, at least
Not
for a
not
while.
unless something really strange happens.
Yeah.
And then we'll have other things to worry about, I'm guessing.
Yeah. By the time you get to snow in LA, there's probably a lot of other things that have happened to you. So let's talk a little bit about the LA Auto Show. It is the last place where everybody gets to get together, I guess, for this year and roll out new product and talk to each other about what the good, great cause of the year. You have the different awards that come along that kind of get a long look at the cars at the LA Auto Show. A couple of years ago, we were talking, I remember this specifically with you about the death of auto shows, that they weren't the same anymore, that with the internet and COVID and everything like that, that things had kind of slowed down for manufacturers, that they didn't want to participate. They wanted to do things on their own. Is that still the story with the auto shows and the LA Auto Show, or has it kind of come back and swung back into it's a big event now?
Well, you kind of look at it as two different things. There's the media side of things where we go in on a media day, where we're looking for news. We're looking for, they're introducing cars for us and showing us all the latest details. But there's also consumer days. And that's when the consumers get to come in and, in one big hall, get to go check out the new Kia, check out the new Hyundai, check out the new Honda, all without having to go to four different dealerships. And so the consumer side of things, I don't think that's changed. I mean, all the newest cars are out there, whether they're, brand new or they've been out for a year. A consumer can go and, for example, the Toyota stand at the LA Auto Show had everything. It's huge. So if you want to go check out the Tacoma, you want to go check out a Camry, all of those things are there, and most of them have test drive ability. So and now when we have so many electric cars, they can do the test drives inside because no fumes.
No
Uh,
emissions.
and of course they still have what they call Camp Jeep. You can go off-roading inside with the Jeeps, climbing up over big inclines, and so there's all kinds of ways that consumers can really get a feel for a vehicle without having to go through, what a lot of people don't like doing is going to a dealership. And so
Right.
it's a nice way to see it all in time. But to your point, as far as news standpoint, it's not what it used to be. It's a lot of the manufacturers now have smaller private events because they get more bang for the buck. It's expensive to show cars at an auto show, and so and a lot of the European manufacturers have just stopped coming to the shows altogether.
Uh, why particularly the Europeans? Just the cost factor, or they just don't feel
It's
like it's an environment for them?
It's a little bit of both, return on investment. I remember talking to someone at BMW quite a few years ago, and when they made the decision not to do auto shows anymore, and they said, it's, to set up a proper stand, to display at a major auto show, you're talking seven figures. And so for that much money, they can rent a location, they can fly people in, they can have a captive audience and showcase their car and not worry about it competing with any other vehicle that might, overshadow it at the show. And
Right.
so for them, a private event makes a little more sense. And it seems that the Europeans, for the most part, have adopted that. So at this show, Porsche, there was a display from Porsche, but I believe it wasn't from Porsche North America. It was a Porsche dealer that had the Porsches there.
Wow.
Um, and there was no Mercedes, no BMW. It's it's a little sad that they've all pulled out.
Yeah, it certainly makes the consumer get, somebody that wants to go and compare these cars to BMWs, Mercedes together, a little not able to do that. And I guess they have to dig harder. But on the flip side, if you want to see these cars, you can go to a dealer, which is for many people a trying experience, and drive them and so. But it's hard; you can't compare them next to each other except on the internet. So that's something that really kind of takes away from that experience. What were the big hits? What were the ones that you walked away saying, "Boy, if I just had that second job driving a school bus."
I see the signs all the time. I could do that. Uh, I don't know that these are cars necessarily for me, but one of the biggest hits is the Hyundai Ioniq 9. So this is Hyundai. Hyundai has already started going down the electrification route. They have the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6. The 5 is more of a crossover SUV. 6 is a sedan. The 9 is their flagship. It's going to be a 3-row SUV. So it's about the size of their Hyundai Palisade, a little bit bigger and definitely bigger on the inside, but all electric. So this will be 300 to 350 miles of range. They'll have a high performance version with over 400 horsepower. It'll tow 5,000 pounds. It'll seat up to 7, and it looks really cool.
It's interesting to see, and I know that we've talked about this a lot. The Koreans, which is really Hyundai and Kia, have really just taken over as far as quality and innovativeness, and so it seems to me that they're the real deal in the market. They seem to be able to consistently crank out product that's interesting, that would move you from an ICE vehicle to an electric vehicle, and I don't want to say at attainable pricing, but I think I will say that at pricing that doesn't knock you off your feet when you see what the final MSRP on a lot of these vehicles is.
Right. I mean, sure, the electric cars are going to be expensive no matter where you go, but they are definitely more affordable, or you get more for your money, at least from, with the Hyundais and the Kias. But they've also been very clear that they have a multi, route strategy. So yes, they
Right.
have amazing electric vehicles and they have gone full in on the electric vehicles. They also have a whole range of plug-in hybrids. They have a range of hybrids. They have gas engines. So whichever way the market tends to go, and next several years it'll be interesting to see what happens with credits and things like that, and that may affect how many electric cars a company sells or how many electric cars they want to build. And so Kia and Hyundai both are really set themselves up well to pivot if they have to.
Right.
But there's an electric car, as I've said before, doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
They are fantastic, as far as the way they drive. They're smoother than a gas engine. They're quieter. Most of them are quicker. But if you do drive a lot, or if you tow a boat or things like that, for me, for example, for most of the time, an electric car would work fine. But we also have a 7,500 pound camper, and that would be a little more difficult with an electric vehicle. Not so much that it couldn't tow it, but it's really hard to pull into a charging station with a trailer on the back.
Exactly, which is one of the things that I know that I'm addicted to, or I watch all the time. this RV Miles channel on YouTube, and they're always talking about the fact that, you know, when the manufacturers or the people that put up the electric stands, the electric chargers, take into consideration people that have to tow things and have to approach a station from that direction. You know,
I mean,
for
I think
many
we'll get there.
yeah, it's just it's a slow. The curve may be slowed down as far as learning for the next few years, but it's still gonna. Is it still gonna stay in that direction, Perry? Let me ask you that, because that's something that I think a lot of people in automotive must have been you know, talk at the show. What are the next 4 years going to look like for all of these companies that invested all of this money into electric vehicles and chargers and so on and so forth?
I don't think anybody knows. You know, we're going to have to wait and see what, you know, if the tax credits continue, that's going to help with electric sales. There's also credits for manufacturers of bringing batteries, you know, selling or building batteries in America. So the new Ioniq 9 is going to be built at an all new assembly plant in Georgia. So it will, you know, bring in a ridiculous number of jobs into Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's you know, and Hyundai has made a huge investment in this thing. So it's going to be building, you know, electric vehicles for the most part had been built overseas, and for this one, it's going to be built here. Um, and so yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But I think that, you know, the infrastructure is continuing to grow, and you know, Electrify America is you know, expanding and trying to improve their product, because I know a lot of people have gone up to charging stations and find they're not working.
Oh,
And now now they have the new North American charging standard, NACS, which is what was started by Tesla. So all the car companies are starting to now move over to that type of charging port, which means eventually the 35,000 plus Tesla superchargers will be available for most electric cars. And
and
that's going to open things up a lot.
also make Tesla owners who usually had exclusivity to those chargers very happy that they'll now see some guy in a Chevy Bolt uh, sitting there charging his car. But hey, this is America. What else did you see at the show? Who else at the show was piqued your interest?
Well, you know, I mentioned Kia, so I'll just talk about quickly about them. They showed a number of updated, refreshed vehicles. They have their equivalent of the Ioniq 9, which is the EV9.
Right.
They introduced a GT version, so basically they're going to have a high performance version. You know, basically a 3-row crossover that'll 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds. And they haven't talked about what the range will be. It's probably a little bit less than the regular one, but you know, you give up that for performance. But
Yeah.
they've also refreshed the Sportage, plug-in hybrid, regular hybrid, gas engine. They all get nicer interior, a little bit more power, number of new features, and so and a fresh look to them as well. So there's, you know, those will continue to be top sellers, I'm sure.
And Kia also seems to be heavily invested still in the sedan market. I mean, they're you know, pretty much saying we don't think sedans are going away anytime soon. Maybe you're buying all these trucks, but we have these nice little, you know, $28,000 sedans that you can go out and buy and come up with a pretty decent car for the money.
Yeah, I mean, the Kia K4 is one of their newest ones. So it's a compact sedan. In fact, I'm going in a couple of weeks to drive one, but it's just now going on sale. They also have the K5. They have, you know, and then, you know, if you want luxury from that brand, you go to Genesis, and Genesis has a whole line of luxury sedans, and that's another division of Hyundai. So it's there's something for everybody from them. Um, you know, it'll be interesting to see which direction the market goes, though.
What did we see from our good old USA automakers out there? Anything that that piqued us, or were they basically running the same stuff through again?
For the most part, it was the same stuff. General Motors didn't even have a press conference. Ford actually didn't either. They just kind of had a tour of their stand. So, I mean, they all have great product.
Yeah.
But Chrysler or Stellantis, excuse me, was the only one that actually had a press conference. And it's funny, you know, the American car company, the main story that they had was the Fiat. So they showed the Giorgio Armani edition of the Fiat 500e. Uh,
Oh.
I'm not quite sure what the market is for that, but it had special Giorgio Armani wheels, different colors. It's got a whole slew of special features, and it's the 500e, which is cute little fun to drive car. Only has about 150 miles of range and not a lot of power, but it's a great little city car, little runabout.
Yeah, I mean, I drove, I guess I forget what they call it, the red edition or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
They've got so many new different names, which I applaud. I mean, I'd love to see somebody just name a car an Impala again, or a Galaxy or something. Bring me back to some of those names. But it was a great little car in the fact that it zipped around nice. It was fun to drive. It was all electric, and it got 150 miles worth of range, which at first blush, you say, well, I don't know. But if this is your second car, if this is your car that you're running to the grocery store, to dry cleaners here, there, and everywhere, if you want to invest that kind of money in that car, it's a sweet little ride. It's a great little ride for what you're getting.
Yeah, it's cute. It's fun. It's a perfect little runabout. It's not a car that you're gonna take the family on a road trip in. It's just not meant for that. And so
Yeah.
but Stellantis had a lot of other things that are percolating that hopefully within the next year. I mean, the one that I think is the most interesting is the Ram Charger. So it's basically full-size Ram pickup truck it's an electric truck, but it has an engine on board that generates electricity for the batteries. So it only runs on electricity, doesn't run off the engine. So it's similar to Chevy Volt, except that this one will tow 14,000 pounds or so, and will have they haven't said exactly what the range is, I don't think, but upwards of 200 miles of electric, plus then you have a gas engine. So if you start running out of power, you can go to a gas station, fill it up. So it's ideal for example, for my situation where most of the time I just need an electric car to pop around, but I need to tow a camper. I could do both with that. So it's fascinating.
Those are the things that I think are going to get people to look at electric cars, to look at the combo. However they can configure it. People want a car that they can turn the key and drive all day. I don't know if everybody's worried about it's electric, it's gas. Give me a car. And I'm talking about, we're enthusiasts. We know about cars. But the average person that goes to Toyota buys a Corolla, if it runs on gas, it runs on electric, as long as it doesn't run out of whatever it runs on, they're going to be happy.
And and as the charging stations become more and more common, and it makes it, and if people have more of an opportunity to have a charging station at home, then you're right, it becomes a no-brainer. I mean, BMW has kind of gone that route for their higher end cars. So for example, a BMW 7 Series, you can get it a 760, which has a gas engine, or you can get the i7, which is electric, but they look identical. They have identical interiors. You're picking the powertrain. Which one do you want? And it's an interesting way of going, but it gives people the flexibility to go with what works best for them.
Perry Stern is with us, old friend of the show and a writer who is. Where can people find your stuff these days, Perry?
Well, I still put stuff up on MSN.com, but I've also do freelance work for Capital One, as well as JD Power and TrueCar.com. So any of
Which
those
are all great sites. The Capital One is interesting, and I've looked at it a couple of times. And that this is basically a financial institution, but they want you to know what you're buying when you go out there and buy something, right?
Right. So now you can go up. You can go find a review of, say, Subaru Outback, and then while you're decide you want to buy that, the financing is right there, and you just continue through a seamless method of doing it.
We were talking about Stellantis a few minutes ago, and is there going to be a Stellantis? I mean, you hear a million different rumors, and then you see, well, these people are going on strike, or these people are, the suppliers are mad at them. There's so many things running around out there. I know that you're pretty plugged in, being back there in Michigan, certainly. Is Stellantis going to survive? Or is it going to be spun off? What do we see out of Chrysler and that group in the near future, and then maybe a little bit more long range.
I mean, it is really hard to say. I mean, they really need to get the product out, and a lot of the electric stuff has been delayed. But there has been rumor that they do have some valuable brands there. I mean, Ram is definitely valuable. Jeep is one of the most well-known brands there is, and it may be that they have to sell off one or them or another of them to stay alive. Chrysler, they have said, is going to become their electric brand. So far, we saw one concept car that was too high end for what a Chrysler would be, so it didn't really make a lot of sense as a concept car for Chrysler. It's pretty, it's a beautiful car, but it's just not what you'd expect from a Chrysler electric car. They've also shown a Chrysler Pacifica electric concept, that or something that could be the concept. But again, this is all, it's hard to get product out, and I think that may end up hurting them. But I don't know. They have gone close to bankruptcy so many times. I mean, we've seen Chrysler owned by so many different companies, Cerberus and Daimler, and so they've bounced around a lot. They seem to have 9 lives, and I don't think they've used them all.
Why do people continue to want to get rid of that company or that group of vehicles? I mean, it seems like you're right. I mean, we've seen them with several different owners, different controlling groups, and it seems like there's a great falderall about it for a year or two, and then all of a sudden falls off the table. And the only constant at Chrysler is Scott Brown, or the guy who's our rep. I mean, he's been there for 100 years, and he'll probably be there 100 more. But other than that, it seems that there's a 2 or 3 year lifespan with people that buy that company, and then or those makes, and then it just seemed to want to get rid of them all of a sudden.
Yeah, I don't really know the logic there, because they do have some. I mean, the Ram truck is the 3rd best-selling vehicle in America, sometimes second. It's passed Silverado a couple times, and it's unfortunate that the big Chryslers, the Chrysler 300 it was ancient, and it was still a really good car.
Yeah.
And it's too bad that they, that's the route they had to take. But they're now, with the Fiat group, there's potential there because they can share platforms with a lot of the, so like the Alfa Romeo, as it's a Tonale, I believe it shares a platform with the Dodge Hornet.
Yeah.
And so there's, they have the ability to share platforms with some of the, Italian companies, and that there's money savings there. And so it's hard to say, it all comes down to product, and a company like Kia and Hyundai are constantly coming out with new product, and it's good product quality. It's what people want, and it's really stylish. I'm not saying what Chrysler has is bad product. But it seems, like the Hellcats, to have to kill off your V8s before you've got something to replace them with. I mean, yes,
Right.
electric Charger is coming, and there's going to be a gas-powered version of it, but no more Hemi. I know that's it's hard to say how many people were buying it because you could get it with a Hemi, but that was and I imagine people who are coming into the buying populace right now may not even know what a Hemi is or care.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's just old guys that care.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the way it always is?
Yeah.
It shocks me too, because now I don't know what I haven't read your review or your thoughts on the Hornet. I absolutely love that car. I thought that was, I mean, every car has minor things to bug you about it, this, that, or the other thing. But I thought for the bang for the buck and what it was, I can't understand why people aren't buying more of them. Is it marketing? Is it the perception of the company?
I don't think people even
the car should be selling a lot more.
I don't think people are even aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a bit of marketing. It's not one of those vehicles that when I'm thinking about a compact crossover that comes to mind. And I'm not sure, like you said, it's perfectly fine. It's great. So is the Kia, so is the Hyundai, so is the Honda, so is the Nissan Rogue. I mean, that's a really tough market. And so it's, and there's some really good vehicles there. And if you see something that you know versus something you're not sure about, what do you go with?
You go
Uh,
what you know. Yeah, you,
yeah,
you got to you got to stick out, but yet you have to be familiar.
yeah, yeah. So
It's a tough
unfortunately, I don't,
battle.
I don't know the answer to their marketing issues.
If you did, they'd probably have you down there with the building with the Pentagon on top, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Harry, fix this. Help us. Um, what else? What else from LA did you see that uh, I expected to see or thought by now we'd see more smaller pickup trucks with the success of the Maverick and a couple of the others that are out there. Yet it doesn't seem like that market has taken off like many people thought it would.
No, it's almost, it's almost more that Maverick sold very well because it's Maverick, not because people wanted the compact pickup. I mean, the Maverick is a fantastic vehicle because it drives like a car, but you've got the utility of a truck, and the fuel efficiency of a hybrid. I mean, it's a wonderful idea, but the Kia, or not, the Hyundai Santa Cruz was out before
Right.
that one, and it was the same idea, compact pickup truck, and it was not terribly popular. So I don't know if there's a market for the compact pickup. I mean, Ford Ranger does very well. Toyota Tacoma obviously sells very well. But those that used to be compact trucks are now, I guess you call them midsize because they got bigger.
Right.
Um, and Americans still love the trucks, and so I think
Yeah.
there is space for others, but a lot of men, it's hard to break into that. I mean, look, Toyota Tundra is very good, but it's never going to come close to what an F Series sells. Um,
Well, it's the
and
market that basically you buy the truck that your father owned or your mother or
right.
your parents, your uncle. It's maybe the most tradition steeped and loyal market of any kind of vehicle.
And they're all really good vehicles. I mean, I've driven, the newest versions of the F-150, from the electric Lightning to the hybrid, to the Raptor R with, its 700 horsepower off-road truck. And Ford has got the formula down. I don't think it's just because people buy it because that's what they know. It's like, they've got the big screen that's really easy to read. They have really good technology. The trailer towing technology is absolutely phenomenal. Um, General Motors has come a long way. I mean, it took them a while to get an interior that was really good, but now it is.
Yeah.
Of course, now they're flirting with getting rid of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's not going to go over well, at least with younger buyers, I don't think. Um, but And then Ram, I mean, I drove the new Ram truck. The Ram truck is fantastic. It probably has one of the nicest interiors of any truck out there. Um, and they all sell really well. But I don't know why, I mean, General Motors has the compact trucks or the midsize trucks. Ram does not, and they have, they used to have the Dakota. That was a long time ago, and they've talked
Right.
about it, but just haven't done it.
Only if they bring back the ragtop.
Yeah, for the 1 year that they sold it.
Yeah, America needs a ragtop pickup truck. Well, I guess we have one in the Bronco and in the Jeep.
Yeah, as I said,
You
the
know,
Gladiator, you can take the top off.
yeah, yeah. So I guess we're okay. If you want one, you want to go out and pay that kind of money for it. Big. It seems to me too that from people I've talked to that were down there and at that show, it had a bit of a I don't want to say somber, but everybody's just walking on eggshells right now. It seems as far as not knowing what's going to happen in the future with electrification, with just so many things surrounding, with safety regulations, all the different things that concern us. There seems to be what's going to change, and radically change, not just strike one line, add one line, but will we see in the next few years radical change again in the automotive industry?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really comes down to what people want. It's the buyer is going to drive a lot of it, and you have to remember, that with vehicles that are going to come out in the next year or two, have been in the works for the last 5 years.
Right.
So they can't, most of the manufacturers can't just turn on a dime and change their route. Um, you know, it 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 just doesn't work that way. And so I didn't get that feeling of, it seemed pretty positive. There wasn't a lot of news, um, but there was a good amount of media. I mean, it was pretty crowded, and more so than I remembered it the last couple of shows. And so it was unfortunate that there wasn't more news. I mean, one of the other ones that hadn't mentioned is the Volkswagen Tiguan
Right.
made its debut there, and it's big interior display screens now, and completely revamped. It looks really good, and Tiguan, Volkswagens kind of have their own driving characteristics that I've always liked. A little bit of GTI in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Tiguan, is new. Taos is their small one. That's also new. So, they're, coming on strong as well. So I mentioned there were no Europeans. I lied. Volkswagen was there.
I saved the best for last for us because I'm actually driving it this week. And if there's one car that created a buzz at the Seattle Auto Show, and
Buzz, is
really
that the operative word there?
was the ID Buzz, which is plays on the Volkswagen Bus, which is the new version, the latest version of the Volkswagen minivan. Uh, so far, and again, I drove it up to Vancouver last night and back to see Bruce. I just wanted to drop that in there.
I saw the pictures. It looked cool.
Great. It was awesome. Maybe the best Bruce concert I've seen in many many years. But that vehicle, I mean, I'm sure they'll sell all they can get, but it's one of those vehicles that evoke. The designers hit the nail on the head with giving you a vehicle that has practicality, but also tugs at your heartstrings.
It does.
Even if you weren't around when the original bus was out, there's still something there in that vehicle that gives it a Steve McQueen, James Dean cool factor.
It does look cool. There's no question. And they don't call it a minivan, but it's one of the best minivans there are. Because, like you said, the interior space. So it has more interior space than a Chevy Suburban. Uh, and
It's
the
amazing.
third row, I think, has almost as much leg room, if not more, than the second row. So I mean, the car is so big inside. It's because, it's an electric vehicle, which means no drivetrain going down the center, no center column, which means flat floor, and you can basically practically make a living room. And it's very tall. When I drove one at the press launch and had parked it next to a Chrysler Pacifica, which is not a small car, it made the
Right.
Pacifica look tiny. But if you look at the actual specs, it's about the same length, same wheelbase as a Pacifica, but it's slightly wider and much taller. And so you've got it just so much more space inside. And it looks big, but it doesn't drive big. It doesn't feel like you're driving a huge
It
vehicle.
drives amazingly compact. It doesn't feel like as big as it is. There's a little bit of a different driving position in it because you're up against not up against a windshield because it's a very sloped windshield, but you're up front, and that gives you a
Yeah,
little bit of a different perspective on your driving. But yet, and the wheels are pushed out, so you're kind of I had a little trouble, not trouble, but it was certainly interesting to negotiate a drive-through because you have to get poutine at McDonald's if you're up there. To drive through the lane seemed to be a little. You had to do it slow if you didn't want to rub the tires
it's a
because there
big
was.
car.
Yeah, there was a certain, and again, it fools you into thinking it's a smaller car than it really is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it gets a lot of attention. It's when
Oh yeah.
I drove it in San Francisco, and we got so many people thumbs up and waving. And when's the last time you drove a minivan that got thumbs up? I mean,
Uh, yeah,
yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I don't
and no,
remember.
not to mention it's electric, so it's smooth and quiet and quick, and it doesn't have as much range as some of the other models out there, but it's certainly usable.
Right. And if you're looking for a bit of a cool factor, if you're looking for something that's going to, it's going to have the kids. I said this last week when I was at the show. It's going to have the kids begging you to drop them off in front of school instead of a half a block away. Uncle Buck could drive this car, and his niece would say, "I want you to drop me off right at the front door, right in front of the gym where all the boys are." You
It
know,
does have a cool factor.
yeah, it's got a cool factor. Um, will we see more of that, or in the automotive industry as we go forward? Are we going to see a thing where minivans and different manufacturers are going to try to cool out their, especially in the minivan market, which always has this perception of, I don't know if I want to be seen driving that. Will that, if the buzz is successful, and all indications is that it will be, will that drive manufacturers into making cooler vehicles?
It's one of those things that's so hard to do. I mean, if there had never been an old Volkswagen bus, I don't know that the ID Buzz would have hit it as well as it is. It's there's certainly a lot of older vehicles out there that they could mimic. Bronco did a great job of bringing back that feeling of the original Bronco, and a lot of other manufacturers have done it. But it's not an easy thing to do, and I think that's why a lot of manufacturers haven't. And then you have a lot of the Japanese models that there isn't as much heritage, or at least there's not heritage that Americans are familiar with.
Right.
Toyota built cars for a long time in Japan, but not as long here. I still think Toyota should bring back a Celica, but
I do too. I would,
but of course that's because I had one. So
I had a couple of them, and to this day, I will tell you, it's one of the best cars I ever drove. I mean, it was bulletproof. It ran great. It was fun to drive. I had both of them. Mine were stick, and they were and they were sporty yet functional and practical. You could cram a lot of stuff under the hatch of a Celica.
Yeah. But yeah, the vintage look is cool for the people that want, and that will be the true test of the ID Buzz is, in a couple of years when all the people who bought one because it's cool have already gotten one, will the sales continue or will they drop off? I think they'll continue because of the utility of the car. Because it's such a good, useful vehicle, aside from the fact that it looks cool. So that will be the true test. I mean, look at PT Cruiser. When PT Cruiser came out, it was the hottest thing you could get, and within 3 or 4 years, they couldn't get rid of them. Beetle is kind of the same way. Beetle, it was around for a little bit longer, the new Beetle, but eventually it got discontinued because there wasn't demand for it. So it'll be interesting. I think this would last better than a Beetle as far as in the market because of its utility, because it's a really good vehicle on its own. Where Beetle was cool because it was a Beetle, but there were a lot of compact cars that had better use of space and were more efficient and that were better competitors. Where the ID Buzz, it's near the top of its game.
Any idea why they're not bringing the commercial, the slab-sided van in version of that into the United States, or is that something we'll eventually see?
My expectation is that, like anything else, they got to keep the news going. So this year we get this one. Maybe in a couple of years we get a short wheelbase version with only one row behind and one back row, because that's what they sell in Europe.
Yeah.
Maybe an R version comes, so we get a high performance version. Eventually you got to put a camper on it. You got to have the Vanagon. So there's all kinds of
things. Mark on there somewhere, right?
Well, they said next year SEMA, it's going to be very cool. There's going to be so many ID Buzzes at SEMA next year, because it's such a great platform for building all kinds of crazy stuff on. But I think it's like anything else. You don't come out with everything all at once because you've got to keep a cadence going.
Right.
And so it's and maybe the cargo van will come over. I had one discussion with one of the Volkswagen PR folks, and mini cargo vans do not sell well over here in general. So it's probably not something that they're going to, Sprinter vans do well for commercial,
yeah,
but they're big. And so I don't know if, that may be, I'm sure they'll be checking out the use case and see if it's worthwhile or not.
Two more quick ones before we let you go, Perry. I really thank you a lot for it's fun to spend time with you.
Oh, absolutely. I always like
Haven't seen
talking
you
cars
so
with you.
long. Um, let's go with the maybe bad news first. VinFast. So many people are expecting this car, and so many people keep expecting something to happen with this company. Is this what's happening with this? I read a couple articles that VinFast was improved. They worked on the quality. They listened. They did this. They did that. Yet it doesn't seem like there's any interest in this car at all.
Well, it's so I drove the VF7 then for the first one that came out. And it was as bad as everybody said. I mean, it had more problems than any new car I'd ever driven, at least in recent times.
Yeah.
They say they have made a lot of improvements, and I haven't driven it since. The VF9 is their brand new one, which apparently is already being delivered, but I saw it for the first time at the LA show. It was just on display. They didn't have a press conference or anything, but it's a big brand. VinFast is huge in Vietnam. It's not just cars, but it's a
Yeah,
big
it's a
industry. Right.
multi-conglomerate.
So there are some deep pockets to keep it going for a while. I don't know. I don't know what their long-term plans will be. They've said that they have a number of vehicles in the works, all electric. Uh, you know, It'll be interesting. I would like to try one again and see if things have
Yeah,
improved.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's hard to launch a brand, and
yeah. It's not
it's
it's not an easy
it,
thing.
no, and it's not, obviously people don't know it here like they do in Vietnam. Um, there's never been a Vietnamese car, so there's going to be people that are, a little cautious about buying something from a country they've never bought a car from before.
Yeah,
Um, that same thing was the case, 15 years ago or so with Hyundai and Kia,
yeah.
however long ago it was. I mean, I guess it was more like 30 years ago, but yeah.
I
Um,
know. It's
but it's,
amazing how quickly time is going.
yeah,
Well,
I know.
Perry, it's so good to catch up with you, man. It's really good to
Likewise, we'll
see
have to
you.
do this more often.
Yeah, let's do it more often because it's always fun spending time with you, as I said. And listen, have a good Thanksgiving. We
You
will,
too.
I'm sure, talk to you right after the new year, and maybe you're going to go to Detroit this year.
Since I'm only an hour away from the show, I'll go this year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll
Uh,
meet you there. We'll sit down and we'll do one like live from the show.
that sounds cool. All
All
right.
right, Perry. Thanks
Have a good
again.
one.
Perry Stern joining us here on Drive Time Radio and TV and everything else for our little Drive Time soiree that we do every week at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. And quickly before we go, we want to give you a little shot of Yo Vinnie, what are you driving this week? Because I did tell you about the incredible little Volkswagen that I'm driving. And I just want to make sure that you got to look at this thing because I'm in love with this car. I'm not going to want to give it back when I have to give it back. But I just wanted to introduce you to the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which is the car that I'm driving this week. And this is, as I said to Perry, I'm just so enthusiastic about this car. I think it's one of the coolest cars that's come out all year, not just because it is, a takeoff or a take on the old Volkswagen bus, but also because they thought of so many little things about this vehicle, from ports to plug your cell phone into or your iPad or whatever you use, to ways to get in and out of it, to things in the back for storage and so on and so forth. It really the Volkswagen people really thought, they didn't just say, well, we'll make a vehicle that looks like an old vehicle and people will love it. They really thought this thing out. They really put it together with a lot of engineering prowess. And the resulting vehicle in this thing is one that, even if you're not in market for cool factor if you're just in the market for a people mover, a minivan, a thing to get your kids back and forth from school and to ballet and all of that stuff. This is a great vehicle. So let's take a look at it as we let me punch it up here so you can see it better. Here we are, the Volkswagen ID Buzz. And the great thing about this thing is that it presents a light show when you walk near it. I mean, you got lights all over the place to flash or blink and do this and do that. But look at the design on this, not just from a perspective of that it's a square box, but they've taken the square box and they've molded it to be something that turns your head, not just in the sense of that it has it's distinct outside, but the color combinations, the two-tone, everything that you see in this vehicle that Volkswagen has put together is eye-catching, eye-appealing, not just for its retro perspective, but also for its perspective of a vehicle that is utilitarian. The seats in the back fold down, they come out. There's a little storage space there. The whole thing turns into a big bed if you wanted to. The ID Buzz, which I think is a play on words on the Volkswagen Bus, really is a vehicle that that provides you with probably everything you want in a minivan. Take a look at the space inside of this thing. It's easy to get into and climb into. It has fun little pockets in the back of the front seats so the kids can put stuff there. You have the rear seat. Look at the leg room back there with the rear seat. I mean, usually you get into that back seat and you're cramped, you're crunched. But yet in this vehicle, you don't get that. You get ample space to move around. The front seats and the interior accents, the lighting inside, the screens, everything is top-notch. Everything comes through these controls on the screen and the haptics and plus the steering wheel. The color combinations, as I said, the interior materials are excellent. If you had one of those old buses, you remember that strap that you used to grab onto. They even pay homage to the Volkswagen Bus with the air vents on the side in this particular vehicle. They're not functional, but they say, remember where this came from. Remember the tradition. Remember where this vehicle got its roots from. And it's an excellent thing. So the Volkswagen ID Buzz is what I'm driving this week. I'm looking forward to spending a week in this thing. I don't know. Maybe we'll even have Thanksgiving dinner in it. Maybe we'll get in this thing and drive Thanksgiving dinner over to you. And you can join us in the Buzz, telling us exactly what you think of it as well. I'm looking forward to meeting up with a couple of Volkswagen bus owners. I have a few friends that have these, the old ones, and, want to get their thoughts on it too. But that is what I am driving this week. That's this week's edition of Yo, Vinnie, what are you driving this week? And that is going to wrap it up for our edition this week of Drive Time Radio. Thank you so much for listening to the show. By the way, next Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock, I will be hosting American Road Radio, where we talk about great road trips and some of the road trips that you can take for Thanksgiving. Matter of fact, let me now wish you all a very, very, very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening to the show. I give thanks every day for my friends that I talk to here on the radio, and as well as people that I talk to at different events that I go to. We try to get out to as many events as we can and, try to just meet up with people and get a feel for what you're thinking of, what you're talking about in the world of automotive. So thank you so much for participating in what is now the 31st year of Drive Time Radio in one form or another, both here and in Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for listening. I will catch up with you on Monday morning at 10:10 with Michael Knight on Mikey and Vinnie Take on the World. Until then, if the Lord's willing, the creek don't rise. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.